Okay, now my canvas is dry and I went ahead and loaded up my palette with the colors that we talked about. As you see, I've put cool colors through here and warmer colors in here with my white in the middle, just like a color wheel. Now you really want to make sure that this is nice and dry. I actually took a hair dryer to it just to make sure, because as you're starting to paint some of your pinks in here, you want to be sure that this is dry, because otherwise it makes a little bit of a muddy mess, especially when you're starting out with a cool color and you're painting in with warm colors. So the idea of this tutorial is not necessarily to take this exact painting and recreate it. What I'm hoping that you develop is understanding how I use my brushes and how I hold my brushes and how I form flowers, especially these roses. And even though in here there are a few little tiny wildflowers coming through and some little tulips back through here, the main floral in this piece is a rose. And I'm going to show you how I mix colors and how I create depth, whether it be a lighter pink rose or this deeper red rose, and how to fill in areas where you're not really for sure what to do. So the reason I decided to use this piece, so you can kind of go back and reference it, is because this composition is fairly simple. It's fairly straightforward. Even though, you know, this flower for sure is one of the bigger florals in this grouping, and there's a lot of wild stuff going on throughout here, the composition is florals in the middle, white space, white space. And I've utilized this several times in paintings in the past, and it's always really been pleasant to me, the outcome. It really helps to create a nice composition. And I think especially for beginning painters, or maybe if you're just trying to figure things out, this will be really helpful to you, this style of composition. So even though we're not taking this exact painting and moving it over here, we are going to utilize the florals here, white space here, white space down here. And we are going to be using the similar color palette so you can kind of see how I do things. So again, this needs to be nice and dry. And what I do is sometimes I use reference photos, sometimes I do not, because we have this one right here, and I know I'm just going to be painting roses and a few wildflowers, maybe a few little tulips here and there. I'm not going to use a reference photo. If reference photos help you, that's great. Use a reference photo. What I would encourage you to do is just go online and look up public domain roses, or even just pictures of roses, so that you can kind of see their shape and understand how they are formed. Something also to keep in mind is to understand kind of where the light is coming from. In this one in particular, the light is coming a little bit from this direction, so you'll see some of those darker colors in here and light. So when you're starting, decide where is the sun, or where is my light source, and if it's down here, or if it's up here, or here, or here, keep it the same in your whole entire composition. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start, and I'm going to start just by taking this peach tone that we talked about earlier in my flat brush, and I'm going to start to form some flowers. And so I'm taking the outside shape like this, and then a little bit of the inside shape, so closed in here, and then I'm going to get my smaller angled brush actually. So I'm gonna, there we go, that'll fill my brush up a little bit more. And we're being careful right now because we're forming the shape of our roses. So roses have this littler, tighter place here. And when you're looking at a rose from this direction, the center is not going to be directly in the center. It's going to be off a little bit depending on how the rose is tilted. So this one, and you don't have to be too perfect here, but we're just going to create the shape of a rose right in here. Okay, pulling that up here. And this is when we're just kind of coming up with our composition, where the roses are going to be placed and all that. So then I'm going to take this magenta color, and I think I'm going to put another rose that's going this way through here. There we go. See, I'm angling that back just a little bit. Okay, I'm going to do another rose down in here, this time a smaller rose. There we go. And I don't really mix these colors a ton because I'm just getting the shapes in there. So this isn't super important that the colors are, you know, just right. I am going to take that straight up Naphthol red, or no, it's not Naphthol, it's Pyrrole, yeah. Pyrrole red, and make a tiny little tulip here. Maybe one coming up, not too much, because remember we want that space. So we're just putting in forms. We're not doing anything with shadows and shades just yet. Maybe one here. And let's see, we're going to come up with another little rose right in here. Tinier one. So now we're just kind of placing different roses, different places. I think I'm going to do another one that's kind of facing more this way. Just building the shapes is what we're really thinking about now. We don't have to think about, you know, oh, is this perfectly placed or is this color look good? No, we're just really saying there's going to be a pink rose here. And I use this magenta really to bring out some red tones. So I'll start in with magenta and I'll probably pile on some red on that. Yeah, in there. Let's do maybe just a few little, a hint of some sort of a flower through there, and maybe a hint of another flower through there. Make sure those aren't too raised. You want to be able to paint into that. And let's do another little magenta through there. And some of these, if you're like, oh, that's not quite the right shape, we can reshape the roses as we go. Do that, and let's put another little something or other in here. And more of the light it's the hint of a flower. We don't know exactly what it is. So we have our basic composition here. Again, this is not an exact replica of this. It's just something very similar as far as in color, feel, and how we're going to do some of the greens. And now once we have this in here, we're going to really start to play with some of the greens. And so what I like to do to make sure that it's not straight from the tube, because some of these greens we're not going to layer too much over, is I take a little bit of that light green and then I just nab a tiny dab of the red so that it's neutralized a bit and it's not straight from the tube. So we're going to start making, with our angled brush, we're going to start making some little leaf-like shapes. I try not to be too precise with some of this. Filling in where I feel like there would be leaves coming. And see, that blue is obviously going to affect some of that coloring too. We're going to pull in some kind of stem looking things, and I'm actually going to add a little bit more red, a little bit more green to make really a true brown. In some of these areas. And this is just about, continuing to layer through here. Okay, so we're really starting to get our composition, a good feel for our composition. And now we're going to start to add in some layering. So I'm going to take this hot pink, that fluorescent pink, and mix it with a little bit of my yellow. So it has this really nice little orangey feel. I'm gonna mix it with just a tiny bit more pink there. It's a real pinky orange, very bright. And I'm gonna start to pull in specifically this flower. We're going to pull in some real pretty orangey tones. A lot of this is just layering in. So we have some orangey tones. And then to visually help with, for me, as far as like knowing where everything is going to be and really blocking this out, because we know we're not going to really show a ton of blue in the end. So I'm actually going to go ahead and start kind of blocking in some of this white. And I just paint some of it right in there. And this is not, I don't do this super thick. I just paint in some of the white here just so we can visually close off that space a little bit. So it's not so blue. So we can kind of see what we need to add, because we know that's going to be really light through here. And then obviously you paint the sides too. And then it doesn't have to be done really well right through here. We just really want that to be covered visually so that we don't have to be confused by the blue. Just get that blue. And then same up here at the top. We'll end up going back in with another layer of white, but just to visually subtract that from our eyes, so that we are seeing less blue and more pinks. That just helps visually if we can go ahead and eliminate that blue from our... Okay, there we go. Okay, we're gonna start in again with this guy, and what I'm gonna do here to help create that center, because the blue is helping a little bit, but we want it to be a bit darker. So I'm gonna mix my phthalo blue with some red, and we're just gonna show where the dip of that flower is. And just show where that darker piece is, just like that. Okay. I'm going to take my red and place a little depth on here, and we'll end up covering some of that. And then back in here, like this. So we don't really want that blue to be showing too much through this specific flower, especially. Okay, now we're gonna make that flower pretty, because right now it looks kind of crazy. So we're gonna make a lighter pink, and I'm gonna mix my hot pink with some of my white. And grab a tiniest bit of yellow. Make it peachy, but it's kind of a hot peachy. And I'm gonna start pulling in petals. And this would just be where the light is hitting that. So we're covering up some of the blues here, covering up some of that red too. Making some areas where it's a little more wide. Just like that. So you're basically sculpting the flower with this little angled brush here. We'll add more white in there. And sometimes I like to add in the green gold or the olive green to, again, neutralize it, because when you're adding opposites, you're going to neutralize, so it's not going to be so pinky pink. And again, our light's coming from this direction, so we're really thinking about that every time we place a brush stroke. All those little tiny petals coming out here.